I run a delivery service for pain.
Let's just talk about guest characters, folks, which, if done right, can act as the perfect window into the world that character came from, getting players perhaps interested in other games or properties they might not have otherwise checked out. There's no genre in gaming that does guest characters better than fighters, be it the character's inclusion was incredibly exciting or it changed the game and its series in some meaningful way. To keep things fair, we're just gonna have one game per series. I'm Baberuthless for EvoFGC, and these are my top 10 guest characters in fighting games. Number 10. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Injustice 2. When Injustice 1 came out and was releasing DLC, I wasn't really expecting a guest character at all, since I figured Warner Bros. Wanted to keep it in the DC family. So I was pretty shocked when Scorpion from NetherRealm's own Mortal Kombat made a playable appearance as DLC. In Injustice 2, it was cool that two MK characters were squaring up with DC for a third time, but the novelty of that had certainly worn off by then.
I believe our combat brought us here.
Then perhaps combat will take us home.
When all 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were revealed as future guest characters, though, I feel that was the most exciting character reveal Injustice ever had, partly because they're such huge cultural icons. TMNT is certainly no stranger to fighting games before or after this game, but I felt this was their best playable appearance in a fighter by far. From their normals to their specials, they all played relatively distinctly and even had unique intro dialogues with the entirety of the cast. It really felt like you got 4 distinct characters.
My training will see me through.
TMNT fit surprisingly well in the world of Injustice and added some levity to the overall pretty serious and somewhat murderous cast.
Shell shock!
Number 9. Chun-Li, Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. I've only seen a single episode of Power Rangers. When Power Rangers Battle for the Grid was announced, I wasn't gonna be too interested unless the monster where my name came from made an appearance. But the people at Enway did me one better by including Ryu and Chun-Li in the game. Now, since we're only picking one character as an entry for this game, I do love Ryu and his design, but my personal bias is gonna have me lean towards Chun-Li. What Power Rangers does for Chun-Li is something I wish more games did for their guest characters, and that's giving them a costume that fits within that game's universe. Chun-Li looks awesome as a ranger and fits right in with the rest of the cast. This game is confident enough in its own branding not to have Chun-Li in one of her classic Street Fighter outfits more people would probably recognize, and I definitely have to respect that choice. Chun-Li is just as iconic as Ryu and deserves more chances to make playable guest appearances in just as many games. Her character is treated with a lot of respect in Battle for the Grid, and certainly makes this appearance one of my favorites. Number 8. Rash, Killer Instinct. Sometimes a guest character can help fulfill an archetype that's not in the roster already. Killer Instinct isn't a game that takes itself too seriously, but all the characters themselves give off a no-nonsense vibe about them. That's what made Rash in particular stand out so much.
I'm crashing this party!
He's not in the cultural zeitgeist like TMNT, but makes up for it with his explosion of personality and cartoony moves. We discussed TMNT in Injustice 2 being a welcome inclusion for their lighthearted humor compared to the mostly serious cast. Rash cranks that way up and comes off as a very jokey and slapsticky character in his actual gameplay.
These cameos are killing me!
His moves are very fun references to Battletoads, from turning into things during moves using the hover bike from the infamous third stage in the NES game, and even his taunt being the pause music from the first game. Rash's initial introduction made it seem like he would be more of a joke character, but Rash was a terror in the competitive scene, making him anything but. Number 7. Spartan 458 Dead or Alive 4. DLC, at this point, has kind of replaced including hidden unlockable characters whether we like it or not. Before the internet was as easily accessible, many fighting games had secret characters you would unlock that could extend the life of a game. One of the last few games to have a truly surprise hidden character was in Dead or Alive 4 with Spartan 458, aka Nicole. Spartan 458 is a character from the Halo universe and has armor that looks exactly like Master Chief's in Halo 2. She even comes with a stage, making the Nasu station a guest stage, so to speak. Guest stages are something I wish all fighters would do when adding a guest character. A guest stage acts as a two-way door for characters in both games to appear in each other's universes. Stages in general are something I talk a lot about since they can act as an extension to who a character is or the world they live in. If you appreciate one of the least talked about aspects in fighters, check out this video here where I go over the stages in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and uncover references, real-world history, or even hidden lore in some cases. Going back to Spartan 458, her fighting style isn't anything special or very referential to Halo beyond her taunt and one really cool grab. The fact that this character was for the most part kept a secret to a lot of people is incredibly noteworthy in my eyes, and the character comes off as an authentic tribute to Halo. Being so secret though is probably why I feel a lot of people forget about this lost Spartan soldier. Number 6. Alien Mortal Kombat X. Mortal Kombat guest characters are very interesting in the sense that aside from Kratos, they don't include characters from other video games. They usually go for the film and comic book route. I'm certainly cool with this since there are plenty of characters from the movies that I'd love to see in a fighting game, especially the ones that don't have good video games on their own. So when Alien dropped in Mortal Kombat X, it was equally as hype when the Predator was revealed as a guest. Both of these characters are excellent choices as guests, and obviously pair together well, but the Alien edges it out by just a bit in my eyes. The Predator fits right in with MK with no changes needed either gameplay-wise or lore-wise. With Alien though, they had to get a bit more creative. If they went with the classic xenomorph from the films, those large proportions would be a bit tricky to work with. To shrink those down to a more manageable size, they quickly explain it away by having the alien come from a different breed of xenomorph that are born from the character Baraka's race, the Tarkatans.
Keep your big mouth and your little mouth shut.
So technically this guest character is an original character, and in the coolest way since it adds some MK flavor into the xenomorph design. The xenomorph is so fun to play as well and is one of the few characters in MKX where I enjoy playing all three variations equally, from his acidic blood, face huggers, and that little bitey tongue. NetherRealm Studios truly outdid themselves by putting their own spin on the alien and by keeping what makes it so iconic intact. Number 5. Akuma, Tekken 7. Akuma being announced in Tekken was mind-blowing in the fighting game scene. Akuma was even made canon in Tekken's lore, with him owing a debt to Kazumi, Kazuya's mom, to kill Heihachi and Kazuya. A lot of guest appearances are typically non-canon to both universes, so it's awesome Tekken went the route of implementing Akuma in the Tekken world in a natural way. The Tekken 7 story mode may have its problems when it comes to pacing and its narrative, but when Akuma shows up, I think we can all agree that was pretty exciting. Spoilers for the end of Tekken 7's story. After Kazuya dumps Heihachi in a volcano, it's revealed in a special chapter that Akuma is still alive after being lasered from space, giving you the chance to fight him, with having neither him nor Kazuya hold back in an incredibly difficult boss challenge. The cherry on top of it all is that he even came with a stage. The guest stage is called the Abandoned Temple. It fits incredibly well as a Tekken stage, and even though it doesn't have any Street Fighter music, both the original songs in this game are bangers. However, Akuma's inclusion isn't without controversy. He also affected the Tekken competitive scene since he was a 2D character in a 3D game going by different rules that Tekken players weren't used to, making Akuma a dominant force in Tekken 7. This caused a rift between players on whether there should be 2D characters like this in a Tekken ever again.
Oh my god! The whole energy bar depleted.
Number 4. Darth Vader, Soulcalibur 4. Sometimes a guest character can be so out of place, it can come off as insincere if it's not a good fit. Sometimes a guest character can just come off as a glorified ad and seem more as a promotional appearance rather than a guest appearance. That being said, if you crank both of those dials all the way up, you can get something that is so out there that it circles back to being amazing. Soulcalibur 4 brought back the idea of console-exclusive characters from Soulcalibur 2 in a big way by having two of the most recognizable characters in all of fiction, Yoda and Darth Vader. Yoda was the Xbox 360 exclusive character, and Vader was the PS3 one. I bet money that the decision process on who went to what console was solely based on the respective character and console's color. Yoda is an interesting attempt at doing something different since he breaks the rules of Soulcalibur due to his height, but sadly in my opinion is not fun to fight as or fight against for that same reason. Darth Vader though was the real deal. He truly felt like how Vader should feel in a fighting game, intentionally stiff and slow but incredibly powerful. Another thing making these Star Wars characters unique was a separate meter for their Force abilities. Vader had some unique uses of this meter. It's so surreal and ridiculous seeing Darth Vader clash his lightsaber with a metal blade, let alone him being on Earth in general. To be honest, I've never seen any Star Wars movies or shows before, so the fact that I love Darth Vader and Soulcalibur as much as I do means Namco really understood the assignment with this unprecedented appearance. Number 3. Snake Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Every time a Smash Bros. Character is announced, it feels like a global event. We all hold our breath hoping it's the character of our dreams being revealed, and speculation and hype for who's gonna make the cut is always a part of the fun of the series. Smash speculation after Melee was still in its infancy, so we didn't exactly know the rules of what characters could be added. That all changed once the reveal trailer for Super Smash Bros. Brawl was announced, and at the very end of the trailer, there he was.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Snake showed that not only were third-party characters inclusion possible, but characters that didn't have the biggest presence on Nintendo consoles and characters from more mature games weren't exempt. People might have been more shocked or hyped for characters like Cloud, Steve, or Sora, but Snake set the foundation of Smash reveals. And you know what? He did it twice. Actually playing as Snake in Brawl, I feel he represents Metal Gear Solid pretty faithfully. While he doesn't have his guns, I think having a variety of gadgets and bombs is more representative of his series. Snake's moveset shows how adaptable he has to be in a fight since he has to do the same in his own games. Something I did with Snake is in 4-player matches where the chaos was high, I would fight as Snake like I was playing a stealth game. I'd strategically place traps in certain parts of the stage, and I'd hit foes from afar with the Nikita missile, and move positions frequently, doing all this while laying prone. This is just a really roundabout way to admit I was camping. Also, something Snake could do in his own games was call his support team during boss fights to gain intel on how to beat him. Brawl references this by having Snake do the same if you do his secret taunt on the Shadow Moses stage. Smash fans weren't necessarily expecting or asking for Snake, but his inclusion set the bar and opened up so many possibilities for future characters to come. Number 2. Ryo Fatal Fury Special. In the early 90s, the idea of a guest character wasn't common in the fighting game genre quite yet. King of Fighters is one of SNK's tentpole franchises people sometimes forget is a crossover of SNK's IPs. Predating KOF, however, is when Ryo appeared in Fatal Fury Special. This secret encounter was incredibly memorable and helped popularize this tradition in the genre. In an updated version of Fatal Fury 2 called Fatal Fury Special, if you didn't lose a round in an arcade mode playthrough, you would encounter Ryo as the secret final opponent in what was called a dream match. This fight ain't no joke either. The input reading CPU for Ryo might drive you mad, but it's fitting to give the player a final challenge like this. During this era, fighting game rumors often took a life of their own, so there was a degree of healthy skepticism that players needed to have. Having something that just sounds like a rumor that turned out to be true is an experience that is completely lost on us today. While Ryo wasn't the first guest character ever, his guest appearance set a precedent for future SNK crossovers, since KOF took the dream match concept even further by bringing together a few more characters from SNK's games, as well as original characters, into one crossover title. Number 1. Akuma, X-Men, Children of the Atom. For the number one entry on here, it has to be something that was meaningful to the fighting game genre as a whole. Being the first or even second fighter to have a guest character is a big deal, but it's not often that a guest character leads into creating another series. Ryo and Fatal Fury inspiring the KOF series is incredible, but SNK owned all of those game franchises in KOF. A true guest to me is taking a character owned by one company and putting it into something owned by a completely different company. Doing that makes the crossover that much more impressive since it takes far more work to do that over just putting in different properties a single company owns. In the early 90s, Capcom was making games with the Marvel license, making games like The Punisher and X-Men Mutant Apocalypse. Capcom, in a phase with making fighters non-stop, created X-Men Children of the Atom, which was a fighting game that exclusively had Marvel's X-Men characters in its roster since Capcom themselves made the game. They added one of their new characters from the recently released Super Street Fighter II Turbo, being the legendary Akuma. Yes, Akuma is on this list twice, but I feel his appearances in both entries are very significant. He does look very out of place and even appears shorter than a majority of the cast. Playing as him though is very fun, since this is the first time a Street Fighter character can move this fast, jump this high, and combo this easily. Akuma's appearance here was the first time a Capcom character crossed over with the Marvel characters, setting a stage for a much larger crossover, being X-Men vs. Street Fighter, the first game in the Marvel vs. Capcom series. It's a perfect fit, since in the early 90s, Street Fighter was one of the most popular video games of that time, and X-Men was one of the most popular comics and TV shows at that time. X-Men vs. Street Fighter, followed by Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, led up to Marvel vs. Capcom and its following games, being a fan-favorite game for both hardcore and casual fighting game fans alike. This series has been a tentpole game in EVO's history and is always incredibly exciting to watch. Sometimes I wonder, if Akuma perhaps was never included in X-Men Children of the Atom, would the crossover games have happened regardless? Hard to say, but thankfully we don't live in that world. Whoever at Capcom had the foresight on how genius having a Street Fighter character square up with an X-Men character might be responsible for the Marvel vs. Capcom series and maybe even all the Capcom crossover titles as a whole. The Marvel vs. series represents the pure, unfiltered hype of what a fighting game series could be with its incredibly fast movement, flashy moves with multiple characters on screen, and its incredibly huge and varied roster. Crazy to think it all started with Akuma picking fights with the X-Men. Again, my name is Baberuthless, and thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you EvoFGC for having me. If you'd like, you can check out my channel where I talk about a bunch of different aspects of fighting games, from the stages, collection titles, or even the box art.